Big rig 18-wheeler truck accidents are no walk in the park. They're a legal minefield requiring extremely skilled navigation. When a massive big rig plows into your life, pursuing your rightful compensation gets very personal. You're facing a severely injured future and corporate bigwigs fighting to protect their bottom line. The injuries resulting from truck accidents are often catastrophic. Survivors may suffer from impairments such as brain injuries, paralysis, and chronic pain. Sadly, many of these accidents are fatal. Navigating the complexities of a truck accident case can be an intricate legal maze, but understanding the critical steps involved can significantly enhance your prospects for a more favorable outcome. According to data from Statista, a staggering number of over 5,700 large trucks were involved in fatal crashes across the United States in 2021, underscoring the gravity of these types of motor vehicle collisions. In this insider-exclusive Justice in America Network TV special, Justice in America, Ruben Mendez's story, our news team sits down with Maxey Scherr, founder and CEO of Maxey Scherr Law, and Robert Collins of Counsel, to discuss how she successfully represented Ruben in a very complex truck accident case where the odds seemed all stacked against her and her client. But as they always say, the devil is in the details, because despite a police accident report, which was totally wrong as to the fault of the accident, and despite all four defendants who thought they were cleverly shuffling blame to others rather than admitting their own responsibility, Maxey settled against three of the four defendants for $11 million and then took the remaining defendant, Titan Transport, to trial and won an additional almost $6.8 million, bringing the total compensation to $16,857,000. Maxey will also share with our news investigators all the challenges she encountered in this case. In many cases like this, where defendants think they are too clever for their own good and try to mount a defense based on fraudulent broker immunity defenses, in cases where the broker is actually controlling, encouraging, overseeing dangerous activities that actually put the public in danger, or showing how a mild traumatic brain injury is not mild at all, or how some employers encourage their workers to falsely label themselves as independent contractors. These individuals under this scenario are now seen as employees, and their rights and employers' insurance coverage should apply. Maxey has earned a reputation as an unyielding trial lawyer who repeatedly represents individuals and families against big companies and the Goliaths of the world, and repeatedly wins. She and her firm always believed that the time to close highway safety law gaps and make a down payment on the safety debt that exists in every state is by passing laws that save lives, prevent injuries, and score financial wins for constituents. And their amazing courtroom skills and headline-grabbing success rate, just like in this case, continue to provide their clients with the results they need and the results they deserve. This is the Insider Exclusive, live from El Paso. It is my great pleasure to introduce Maxey Scherr and Robert Collins to the show. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Maxey, tell us a little bit about your firm. What do you specialize in?
So my firm specializes in trucking crashes that result in brain injury or death. I've had my firm, I've been a lawyer for a long time now, coming on 18 years. And I've been involved in all different sorts of historic and landmark verdicts. And about 3 years ago, just over 3 years ago, I started my own firm, and that's called Sherr Law Firm. I was one of the first women in this country that got board certified in truck accident law. And I've tried tons and tons of truck crash cases. I also went to school before law school for neuroscience. So I wanted to study to be a brain doctor and switched gears and went to law school. And so I've kind of combined my experience and my expertise into one area. And that is, like I said, truck crashes that unfortunately result in wrongful death or brain injury. And I help people all across the country that have been involved in that situation.
Today we're here talking about one of your clients, Ruben Mendoza.
Ruben is my client. Ruben was in his 20s when he was hired by his employer, Titan Transport, to transport an RV from across the country. So he was an RV transporter. And the process that they had at Titan Transport is that they would find drivers and advertise for drivers that do not have CDLs, but do have trucks of some sort. And so Ruben had a Dodge Ram. They hired him and did an exclusive possession lease on his Dodge Ram. And they would dispatch him to leave his town here in El Paso, drive up to Indiana in his vehicle that they leased for their exclusive possession and their exclusive control. And he would thereby go up to Indiana and pick up an RV and then transport it across the U.S. for them. So that's what happened on this day. He was driving his vehicle that he leased to them, and it broke down out in rural Texas. And when it broke down, he was parked on the Gore, which is kind of that triangular area on the highway between the highway active lanes and the exit. And he had been parked there for a bit and was trying to figure out what to do when a truck driver in her 60s who was driving AT&T equipment for a company called TF Dedicated and DSX fell asleep at the wheel. She was experiencing what's called micro sleep. And she was experiencing these moments where she was in and out of sleep. So she actually ran into him full speed. She didn't hit the brakes until after impact and hurt him. And so he ended up suffering a mild traumatic brain injury. And I had the honor with Robert Collins of representing him, and we brought a claim against his employer, Titan Transport, and we also brought claims against the trucking companies and the driver that rear-ended him.
You had a lot of legal challenges in this case. What were they?
That's the calling, right? And that's one of the things that inspires me about working with Maxey is that she's had the calling. I started doing this over 50 years ago when I was training truck drivers, working from 11 at night till 7 in the morning, inspecting their trucks and weighing their trucks. They were regulated then by the government. The government deregulated that industry, and it became all about profit and money. So the entire problem is that the business model is built to minimize safety and minimize cost. So they're unsafe. And we have some of the worst results daily in this country of multiple fatalities, completely unnecessary, based upon the business model to maximize profits for Wall Street and minimize cost, including cost for safety. So yeah, with every trucking company, that's the challenge. Delay, deny, depose. We've heard that for 30 years. It's only come to the forefront of knowledge of the American public recently.
So like Robert was alluding to, the entire system now has allowed for a sword and a shield defense for trucking companies. What we have is a system where trucking companies can go now and get authority called broker authority, which is what happened here. In order to become a motor carrier, Steve, it's super easy in this country. To become a motor carrier, you fill out a piece of paper and you pay $300, and that's it. You're a motor carrier. It's the same thing to become a quote unquote broker. You fill out a piece of paper and you pay $300, and then you're a broker. So the law has allowed for these companies that call themselves brokers to try to shield and become immune from lawsuits. And so big companies like TF Dedicated have gone in and they have filled out a form calling themselves a broker, getting broker authority, and then making these small mom and pop shop drivers, individual drivers with one or two motor vehicles, commercial motor vehicles, file their $300 paperwork to call them motor carriers. And then they try to wash their hands and say they're the ones fully responsible. We are brokers. So one of the challenges that we had here was proving that the lady who was experiencing microsleep and rear-ended him worked for not only this mom and pop shop called DSX, but also proving that the real puppeteer of all of this was TF Dedicated. They came in and said, we have nothing to do with this. We are immune under F quad A preemption because we are brokers. But the facts that we were able to uncover, I mean, I took all these depositions in this case, and in every single deposition, I knew that I had to beat this broker immunity defense that they were going to try to bring forth. And what we found in these depositions was that this driver did everything under the scope and authority and viewpoint and vantage point and direction and control of TF Dedicated. But they kept saying, yeah, I know she said that she turned in her driver logs to me. I know that we gave her the dispatch. I know that we were telling her where to go, where to pick up, where to drop off, that everything was in our name, that et cetera, but we're brokers, so we're immune. So that was one of the big challenges. Steve, there's another big challenge because we found out that at the scene, our client was actually found to be the cause of the collision. But the police at the scene determined that it was Ruben's fault because they claimed that he was actually parked in a way that protruded his vehicle into the active lane of the highway. And so we got around that in a bunch of different ways. First of all, the driver that rear-ended him still could have seen him. And he had flashers on the back of his truck, right? And they hired an expert that said he was over so many feet. I think they said 3 feet over. We also hired an expert, an accident reconstructionist, and the accident reconstructionist went out and was able to determine from the actual evidence that he was not over 3 feet. He was just a few inches into the active lane of highway. And if she had just stayed in her lane, she never would have hit him. But what we found from the actual evidence was that the police failed to determine that she was actually experiencing microsleep in this way that made her go over the fog line of that gore strip. So she was into this triangular gore further than he was protruding out. And like I said, she didn't even hit the brakes until after impact, because we can do what's called an ECM download. An ECM is an electronic control module, and those are in the truck. So it's like a black box. So from that, you can tell when someone hit the brakes, when they accelerated, whether they were on cruise control. It's like a black box of a plane that people are familiar with. And what he found was that by the movements of the acceleration and the deceleration, that she was experiencing microsleep. He's an accident reconstructionist, but also a human factors expert. And so he determined from the acceleration, deceleration, the brake patterns, everything that she was doing, that is not something you do if you're awake. But the other challenge in this case, and the other way we were able to defeat what you asked me about before, the fact that he was protruding into traffic, is because there's also this claim that I had mentioned that we brought against Titan Transport, his employer. And even though he did not have a CDL, the vehicle he was driving qualified as a commercial motor vehicle. And employers have certain non-delegable duties. So they are supposed to train and make sure that they've got drivers that are knowledgeable and educated and skilled and able to drive safely commercial motor vehicles. And Ruben was never trained by them on what to do in the event of a breakdown when the vehicle that they had leased broke down. And he did not know, because they did not train him, that he was supposed to put out flares. And those flares should have been put out at different intervals all the way up to 200 feet. And 200 feet would have given this lady who was experiencing microsleep a 20-story building worth of notice that there was a danger in front of her. And because Ruben was never trained, those flares were not put out there, and therefore she didn't get the notice that she was required to get. So that's the other way that we dealt with it. These are duties of different duties of different companies. The TF Dedicated and DSX defendants had duties to the public and duties to train their driver and to not let an unsafe driver on the road. But simultaneously, Titan Transport had duties as well, and they failed them. I and Robert, we were fighting the whole way through to prove that TF Dedicated was not a mere broker, but instead was a hidden motor carrier. And that was our big fight. And the week before trial, they ended up offering the policy limit so that they paid that. And so Robert actually, Robert is my mentor, and I try a lot of cases with Robert, and we talked about what to do because we still had this case against Titan Transport that was pending. And it's funny, Steve, because the case against Titan Transport, we didn't even have a deposition of them. So when I was taking these depositions, the owner of Titan Transport caught COVID and canceled his deposition and never provided us another date to depose Titan. So we didn't even have a deposition of Titan. And so we contacted Titan's lawyer. I think I tried, and Robert definitely tried, and wanted to see what they would put into the pot to try to get it resolved. And it could have gotten resolved. But Titan Transport told us no. And so we said, great, we'll see you in trial. And so we met in Dallas, and we had a war room, and we had a couple of days to completely change gears and to take Titan to trial without a single deposition, without a single expert, without anyone who had previously been on record, at least in a deposition, saying that this is Titan's fault. All that we had was the facts of what had occurred and the petition that was filed saying that we were bringing this claim against Titan Transport for failing their duties. And one more thing that Robert can touch on even better than me is that Titan Transport elected to opt out of workers' compensation in this state. They're not a Texas employer. They are based out of Indiana. So they came in and hired people in this state and then failed to provide their workers compensation. And so in Texas, you don't have to have workers' compensation. It's one of the only states that has this scheme, right? So employers do not have to give their employees workers' compensation. Employees can be completely unprotected, as Ruben was. And then if they do that, they don't get the benefits of lifetime medicals and of an impairment rating. They don't get it. So it's a really terrible thing. But the benefit, I guess, of the injured workers is that unlike workers' compensation, you can sue them in court. And the employer who opts out and fails to protect their workers with workers' compensation, in exchange for failing to pay that money to protect their workers, they lose most of their common law defenses. And so any negligence, however slight, binds the employer to the entire verdict.
Robert, you're the dean of trial lawyers when it comes to trying trucking cases. And a lot of that has to do with where you came from, training truckers way back when, and for the last 50 years being a trial lawyer and knowing how the game works. Tell our audience a little bit about that game.
You know what you've been hearing about, and part of the reason we were able to know what to do is you've heard about the business model. This isn't just Titan, it's not just Pinnacle, it's not just these companies in the Mendoza case, it's all of them. In every case, the police officer is confronted at the scene by a rapid response team sent there by an insurance company that is behind defending the claim before anybody even knows there's a claim. That state trooper, that police officer is influenced at the scene to make those decisions that will later be adverse to the person who's really the victim, the plaintiff.
I've done a lot of train wreck cases, and I've seen that the railroad companies have a financial incentive to make sure that that local police, law enforcement gets, let's say, rewarded for telling the right story.
Well, you've now identified the oligarchy of the transportation industry. It started with the railroads, the way they defended cases, the way they became immune from liability for cases. One of the reasons that we had a statute, the Jones Act, that made it favorable for people who were hurt by railroad companies was because of the outrageous excesses of the railroad industry in killing people. Well, the same is true of the trucking industry now. Everybody on the road knows that the 18-wheeler is the bully, that they're going to run them off the road, that they're going to speed, and that they have bad drivers. Now, how did that happen? Maxey mentioned it earlier, the brokers. What a game that is. For example, you have a load that's in Miami that needs to get to New York. Somebody's willing to pay $2,500 to transport that load from Miami to New York. After 5 brokers get through brokering that transport, there's about $300 left for the truck driver. Now we know why we have untrained, inexperienced, unsafe truck drivers and trucking companies. It's always been, and it always will be, all about the money. And that's why at the end, your question about juries, if we honestly communicate with the jury about the truth of what they are dealing with, which I just described, they get it.
Right. Today we have with us your client, Ruben Mendoza. So let's bring him on right now. It is my great pleasure to introduce Ruben Mendoza to the show. Welcome to the show, Ruben.
Thank you.
What a horrific crash you were involved with. What do you remember from the crash?
Don't remember much. I just remember a person hitting on the window, like trying to say if I'm okay. I really don't remember that much. I do remember him opening the door, me getting off the vehicle, and going to his car, if I'm correct. I don't remember. Yeah, I think I did. After that, the officer got there and started like checking everything out. Don't remember much of it because I think I was in shock, as well as I had hit my head on the window, if I'm correct. After that, it was pretty blurred out. I remember the officer asking me some questions that I don't remember what he was saying.
Did you tell him that you don't quite understand what he's asking?
No, I did not. I guess I wasn't in my 5 senses. I was like in shock, I guess I would say.
They transported you to the hospital after that?
I went to, sheriff took me to a truck stop. If I'm correct, it was Petro. I was there waiting for my sister because she was going to pick me up.
So far at that point in time, you really didn't understand or were aware of the injuries that you had suffered?
No, not at all, until the officer dropped me off at the truck stop, like maybe 10 minutes later, 5 minutes later, I don't remember much. That's when I started feeling like everything, like my head started hurting, my neck started hurting, back started hurting, everything, like my whole body. I felt dizzy, drowsy, like really bad.
Now, Maxey, your background is, fortunately, the study of the brain and injuries to the brain. You keep mentioning, up until the time that I read this case, I've always seen the term traumatic brain injury, but it comes in various degrees, doesn't it?
It's a misnomer. There are 3 categorizations of traumatic brain injuries. There's mild, moderate, and severe. And mild doesn't tell us that someone is mildly hurt or moderately hurt if it's a moderate TBI, or severely hurt if it's a severe TBI. It just is 3 different categorizations.
So what are the symptoms of mild traumatic brain injury?
Yeah, and so the symptoms of mild traumatic brain injury, you don't have to hit your head. You don't have to lose consciousness to qualify for a mild traumatic brain injury. You can even have what's called an acceleration-deceleration injury, which is your brain is inside of your head, and your brain is the consistency of like Jell-O. And so when you're hit with something like an 80,000-pound truck, like Ruben was, that was going 70 miles per hour, and if it does what it does in these photos to a Dodge Ram, think about what it does to the jelly substance that's inside of your skull when it shakes around. And inside of the skull, we've got things that are kind of thorny. It's not smooth like people would imagine, but there are little thorny type substances inside underneath the skull. And when this jelly substance moves around, it could scrape against those thorns, and different areas of your brain could suffer brain damage. And so in Ruben's case, what happened with Ruben is that he suffered what the doctors coined as a mild traumatic brain injury when he was hit at full speed by this 18-wheeler. And it symptomized in Ruben in a way that is unique only to Ruben. So what people in the brain injury world know is that when you've seen one brain injury, you've seen one brain injury. None of them look the same. And it really is very, very, very important for doctors who, the emergency room, Steve, misses most brain injuries. I think it's more than 90% are missed. CT scans, they don't look for brain injuries. They look for hemorrhages or acute injuries that could kill you right away. MRIs don't even pick up on it most of the time. The MRIs that are done in the emergency rooms often miss it. And so what's important for medical providers and doctors and lawyers to do is to really get to understand how, if at all, your client's life has changed. And I've spent dozens and dozens and dozens of hours with Ruben just asking him, what's different? How have you changed? What is your life like? And that way I can get an idea of what this brain injury did to him. He was diagnosed at the emergency room with the symptomology consistent with the brain injury when he got there. And so learning the symptoms and learning how Ruben's life changed was super important.
This accident is coming up almost on its 4th anniversary, May 12th,
Yes, sir.
2021.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to ask the same questions that she just posed, which are, how has your life changed? What's different between the Ruben pre-May 2021 and today?
Oof. I would say back before the accident, I was a normal guy that would like to be a lot with his family, like that would be in constant in touch with them. I liked going to the gym, swimming, horseback riding. I loved it. Now I can't.
What about today? You don't like those things?
I do. It's just, it's been like kind of a problem to like fit in, or I feel sometimes that I don't know, like I'm like out, like I'm not in the conversation with the family. Let's just say, like if I go to a family,
You feel like an outsider.
yes, exactly. Thank you. And like before, I would talk a lot with my sister or any of my cousins or mother, and now it's more like, oh, hey, hi, mom, how are you? And that's it.
So it makes you feel a little bit unhappy.
Exactly.
How are you trying to, let's say in your mind, fit in now?
Trying to like talk to them more, like try, even though I feel inside like, oh no, it's not worth it, or just stop talking and leave the room or just leave the house or whatever. Now I'm trying to like try to fit in again like the way I was before. Like with my wife, she was after the accident, so ever since I started going out with her and married her and everything, we've had our problems like normal, but sometimes I feel that because of my issues that I have in brain or back or anything, it's caused a lot of problems between us.
So you got your good days and your bad days.
Yeah, but mainly it's a lot of bad days. Yeah, well, I have some good ones, but mainly,
Well, you know how to work on it. That's the important.
yeah, I've been trying to work on it with my wife.
Do you go to therapy with your wife? And
Yeah, I used to go to therapy with my wife. Now it's more like if we have a problem, we talk about it. But mainly it's because I get like a lot of headaches or back problems. And sometimes she feels that I'm joking about them, but in reality, I'm not. So, like whenever my son wants me to carry him, I could only carry him 5-10 minutes max, and then my back starts hurting. And sometimes she'll be like, "Oh, come on, you could do it. You could hold him more." But the problem is that I really can't. Like it starts hurting really bad.
so let me ask you, this was a big verdict, right? What do you think about the job that Maxey and her firm did for you?
Oh, they did a magnificent job. Like, thank you. Like, in reality, there's no way how I could tell her thank you or any other way I could be grateful for it. Because if it wouldn't be for Miss Maxey, I don't know where I would be right now, honestly.
Well, you found the right lawyer, that's for sure.
Yeah, I did. I really did.
And we wish you continued success
Oh, yes.
in getting better and dealing with the issues you have.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much for being on the show.
No, thank you. Really do appreciate it.
It is my great pleasure to introduce Roger Allen. And before I introduce him, I want to let everybody know he is the #1 safety trucking expert in the country. Welcome to the show, Roger.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Roger, you are an expert. Why?
I spent my whole life in this business, trucking industry. I started working in the trucking industry in 1959. I was a junior in high school. My father passed away, who was a terminal manager for a trucking company. I immediately went to work for my aunt and uncle, who owned a trucking company that my great-great-grandfather started back in the 1900s. As I said, I was a junior in high school. I worked full-time, finished high school. And since that time, there's really not a thing I haven't done in the trucking business, including driving trucks over 2 million miles, owning my own companies, general manager, safety directors. I've been a school bus driver, driver-trader, tour bus trader, safety director. It's been my whole life.
Let me ask you this question. Here you are at the later stages of your life, and you're still active in making sure that the roads are safer from truckers, from the 80,000-pound torpedoes that are going down the road. Why are you doing that?
Truckers now, drivers, and trucking companies. They think they own the road. They don't care if people get hurt. And they don't want to take responsibilities for what they've done wrong. That's why I do what I do. I want to make the road safer. And if I can save one life or one person from getting injured, then I think I've done something.
Do you see the transportation industry becoming more safer or less safer?
Over the years, it's not getting any safer because nobody wants to follow the rules. Trucking industry is a quick buck for the right people that just want the buck. That's all they care about. The people that really care are going to follow the rules and regulations, and it's going to make it safer. But that's not the way our world is now.
If you could change one thing in the trucking industry right now, what would it be?
Everybody agree to do the safest thing, follow the rules and regulations. That would be it, sir, because that will make things better.
Okay, what do you see truckers doing today that make the roads unsafer?
Whoa, that covers a lot of stuff. Not doing proper inspections, not carrying, driving too fast. It's just like they've moved the speed limits up for 80,000 trucks, 75, 80 mile an hour. It's going to take 3/4 of a mile to stop one of the things at that time, or over half a mile. It takes longer to accelerate, a lot longer to stop and turn, because they're 8.5 feet wide. They're up to 75 to 80 feet long. They take up so much room, and you don't stop them. And the brakes and everything are not made for the speeds that these trucks travel nowadays.
You have been an expert on many cases, haven't you?
I've given over 1,400 depositions. I've testified live at trial over 130 times in state and federal courts all over the country.
So you're the man, right?
That's what I've been told, and but I love what I do, and as long as the good Lord will let me, I'm going to keep doing it.
Do you see a truck in heaven waiting for you to drive?
I would hope so. I loved every minute I drove trucks.
It's a different career. And I want to thank you very much for your input on the show.
Thank you, sir.
It is my great pleasure to introduce an economist by the name of Dr. Charlotte Otabor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
What role did you play in this case as an economist?
My role was to calculate the economic damages to Mr. Mendoza.
And how do you do that?
Well, most of the time, as a forensic economist, we're looking at how the law tells us to calculate the economic damages. In Texas, one of the things we have to look at is his lost earning capacity. And basically, the lost earning capacity is just, we're trying to calculate the future damages. And so we look at his education, his experience, the job he has before, and all of those things, we take that into account when trying to calculate his lost earning capacity as a result of the accident.
Now, Maxey, as a lawyer, obviously the other side is going to contest this. They're going to say, no, he can do this and he can do that. How do you get around that?
Well, you get around that by hiring a quality PhD expert like Dr. Otabor. So here's what happened in this case. We were in trial, and they did. The other side hired a counter economist who wrote their report and said whatever they said to contest it and refute it. So we're in trial, and the judge calls Dr. Otabor up to the stand, and she's up there on the stand and gives her testimony. And at the same time, the defendant's economist is in the back of the room. They're in the courtroom. And Steve, I've never seen anything like this. So he's there watching her testify. And she testifies and explains what she's doing to the jury. The defense lawyer is kind of teasing her in a way, to say it nicely, about how she's so academic and she's just giving pure academia opinions.
Not in the real world.
Not real world. He's saying, oh, Miss PhD, and you're a college professor, and this is all academia.
You objected to that, didn't you?
Well, no. The jury seemed to quite like the testimony that Dr. Otabor was giving. And when the defense lawyer was trying to pick on her, and he made it a point to say, she's the one I'm going after. He filed motions on her, tried to pick on her, et cetera, et cetera. When I say I've never seen anything like this, what I mean is, at the end of her testimony, their expert left, and I mean took off on them. And so we could see the assistants for the defense lawyers coming back like, we don't know where he is. He's not answering his phone. He bolted. They lost their expert after the expert saw Dr. Otabor testify.
The overall combined verdicts and settlements was almost $17 million, right? Was that pretty much the figure that you had arrived at, calculated?
Some of it was. I know for the lost earning capacity, what I did was I created 4 scenarios for Mr. Mendoza because he was a businessman. He actually had different certifications. He went to trucking school to get his CDL, but he decided not to get that CDL. Instead, he decided to buy a truck, hire a driver, and then lease that to a different company. So there were different things he was doing that I had to take into account that when I calculated his economic damages. So that was one. I also calculated the lost household services as things to do around the house that you're no longer able to do because of the accident. And so things like vacuuming and all of that. So we use market analysis for that. And then I valued his life care plan. Although I'm not a life care plan, I do have to look at the future value of his medical costs and then bring it back to present value. So that means what would be the cost today? And so those 3 came up to about, I want to say about 10 to 11 million. And I think the rest of it was mostly from non-economic damages.
Well, you did a wonderful job. Both of you did a wonderful job. And we thank both of you for being on the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.